What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today, I'll be going over the latest news and updates from training camp and the preseason. We're going to learn a lot more over the second and third week of preseason, but some key things have already happened that we should really go over. Before we start, let's do the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was which wide receiver had the second highest red zone catch rate behind Michael Thomas. The answer was Brandon Cooks, and Avery Simmons got that one right. Today's stat: last season, among running backs with at least 100 carries, who had the highest yards per carry without having a single rush greater than 50 yards? All right, let's start the news off with Theo Riddick, and he's going to miss 6 to 8 weeks with a fractured shoulder. This is obviously a big boost to not only Philip Lindsay, but also Royce Freeman. We know that Freeman was essentially going to see zero receiving work, so maybe over this first month he can carve out a small role for himself. But really it helps Philip Lindsay, because before this injury, I was saying really tough to draft a guy because for the whole season, he's already splitting time with Freeman, and now you've got Theo Riddick taking a third down role away from him, so his value is really hurt, and he was going much too high. This helps, of course. I'm still not drafting him because the 6 to 8 weeks was in the past, and now it's really going to be like 2 to 4 weeks of the regular season, so it's not something that like Theo's out for the whole year. So I do think Lindsay is still going a little bit too early, but it does help his value, of course, having Theo out for about a month. Jerick McKinnon is probably going to open the season on the IR, assuming that they don't cut him. Like I've said in basically every video this week, Jerick McKinnon's not going to have a role on this offense this season, and he might not have a role at all. Tevin Coleman and Breda are the two backs you want to be drafting in this offense, and they're both guys I would be targeting in every league. Dante Pettis still does not have a firm grasp on that starting role. They don't play again for week 2 until Monday. I believe they have the last week 2 preseason game, so hopefully he can improve in that game and secure the starting role basically, but there's a very real chance that Deebo Samuel emerges as this team's top receiver, but he's not being drafted that way. So as of right now, I've taken the target tag off of Dante Pettis, and I do have Deebo Samuel as a target as my wide receiver 49, 18 spots above ECR and 17 spots above ADP. So if you want a wide receiver in this offense, then I would honestly go after Deebo Samuel. He's not going to cost you anything. It's going to be like a very late round pick, and there's still a chance that he passes Dante Pettis on the depth chart. Leonard Fournette said that he's in a better place mentally and that he's 100% physically. His backups have also been terrible in camp and the preseason. He has absolutely no proven talent behind him at all. This is Fournette's offense. He's going to have a monster season because he's going to have a monster workload. They're going to feed him the ball on the ground and through the air. So while he's extremely inefficient, anyone would put up a ton of fantasy points given the volume he's going to get. There's no way that if he doesn't get hurt, he's not going to crush his ADP. But obviously the injuries are concerned. But here's the thing, like in his range, you've got a ton of running backs that also have concerns. I mean, once you leave like the middle of the second round, every single remaining running back has either injury or volume concerns. Every single one of them. So yeah, he's got injury concerns, but so do like 4 other third round running backs. So I've said don't target him in recent years. I've said that maybe it's a little bit risky for me this season, but I do have him ranked 2 above ECR and right at ADP right now because of the volume he's going to get, and the only way he doesn't crush is if he gets hurt. Curtis Samuel has apparently been unguardable in camp, and the hype train is just out of control at this point, but his ADP is still fine. And I think the reason for that is that people are either concerned about Cam Newton's shoulder, or they're skeptical that, I mean, they haven't seen this kid be elite, so they don't know that he can be. I still have him ranked 6 spots above ECR, 9 spots above ADP, so I'm still trying to get him in every format. I don't believe fully that he's going to pass DJ Moore as the team's #1 wide receiver, but it could happen, or they could be basically the same in targets. But regardless, he is a great wide receiver, and people don't realize that. So continue to target him even at his increased ADP. Christian McCaffrey, staying with the offense, the Panthers are trying to get a backup running back that can take away a lot of McCaffrey's goal line work. I take that with a small grain of salt. I mean, they made it seem like they don't want him to get any goal line carries. He's going to get goal line carries, but remember some of the stats I've pointed out that indicate maybe Christian McCaffrey's not going to get as many touchdowns, especially on the ground, as he saw last season. Currently, they don't have someone on the depth chart that's capable of taking, snaps away from him. So this would only be if they bring someone in. So I wouldn't be concerned right now, but if they trade for someone or something like that, then obviously we'll reevaluate the situation. But as of right now, I'm not changing my ranking on him because there's no one on their roster that can legitimately take snaps away from him. Chris Godwin. Godwin was in on all 12 of the first team snaps in the Bucs' first preseason game. He played the slot also on all 4 plays where they went into 3 wide receiver personnel. This is exactly what we expected, and it confirms that he's going to be an every down wide receiver with a massive slot role. You need to be targeting Chris Godwin in all of your leagues. Dontrell Hilliard. The Browns have said they want to use Hilliard to fill the Duke Johnson role, and they expect him to only be in on third downs. And that sounds to me like he's going to be in on some third downs, but not really take any first or second down reps away from Nick Chubb. I think that Chubb and Hilliard are going to combine in the early portion of the season to fill the Duke Johnson role, and then once Hunt comes back, Hunt's going to take over most of what Hilliard was doing, plus some early down work. That's how I read that. But again, we kind of want to see a little bit more about how they use these two in the preseason moving forward. Calvin Ridley, he's looked fully healthy since returning from the hamstring injury. He missed 2 weeks with the injury, but the team just wanted to wait until he was fully healthy to recover, and it looks like he is. Hamstrings do take a while to completely recover from, so he is at elevated risk to re-injure it, but assuming he doesn't suffer a setback before your draft, consider him fully healthy. Darius Geis still hasn't been cleared to play in preseason games. Watch this one closely. We're still not drafting Geis at all. I'm still not touching any running back in this backfield. But if he doesn't get cleared to play to start the season, you can consider drafting Adrian Peterson, especially if you want to go RB0. I still do expect him to get cleared at some point, and so I'm not touching this offense really at all, besides maybe a shot on Trey Quinn. But keep an eye on the situation because value could come up with Adrian Peterson. Golden Tate lost his appeal of his 4-game suspension, and the NFL has a zero tolerance policy, so this was to be expected. We weren't drafting him anyways, so this doesn't change anything, but it does help Shepard and Ingram because they're going to be fed a ton of targets over the first month of the season, so they remain targets for me at their current ADP. Amari Cooper has plantar fascia irritation, and we don't know how severe it is, but this is an injury that can linger. So while he's fully expected to be ready for week 1, if you're scared about the injury, then just don't draft him. There are a ton of great options where he's going in drafts, so I'm okay if you don't want to get him. I had him as a target, but I have taken him off because we haven't received any news that he's a full go. If we do get news that this is behind him, he's fully prepared for week 1, then I will add him back as a target. But as of right now, we don't know enough about the injury. Kalen Ballage. Every day out of camp, the reports are just overwhelmingly positive surrounding Ballage. He was dreadful as a rookie, but the job is his now after the Drake injury. So I expect his ADP to rise a lot over this next week. But as of right now, he's my running back 34, still 8 spots above VCR, 12 spots above ADP. And if you want to see my full rankings and projections, along with player notes, then check them out at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. This, of course, relates to the Kenyon Drake injury. So all we know about that is that his foot injury is going to take, quote, a while to heal. That's it. That's all we have at the moment. So you're not drafting Kenyon Drake. We're not taking a guy whose injury could take a while and who was already splitting reps with his backup on a bad offense with a terrible offensive line. So no, don't you dare draft Kenyon Drake anymore. We had him as a target like a month ago, but as soon as these reports came out, as soon as his injury comes out, stay away. So don't be drafting Kenyon Drake under any circumstance. Latavius Murray. So aside from Breeze, the Saints starters played 15 snaps in their first preseason game. Kamara played 10 and Murray played 5. So like we've said all summer, Murray is playing the Mark Ingram role, and Kamara's role will not expand unless Murray gets hurt. This is confirmed in the first preseason game. We'll see if it continues into week 2 and week 3. But as of right now, assume that Latavius Murray is Mark Ingram when drafting. Chris Carson. Carson is expected to see 2/3 of the Seahawks carries, and Schottenheimer wants to get him 50 targets this season. Those numbers would make Carson a high-end running back too, and a very large value at his current ADP. So even though there's a big injury risk, like I said, with all of the running backs going in that range, this dude has crazy upside if he stays healthy. So he needs to be in the conversation with those mid-third round running backs. I currently have him as a running back 19, 2 above ECR and ADP, because, like I said, all the running backs in that range have their concerns. But if he stays healthy, he's going to crush it. He's clearly ahead of Penny at this point, but you can still draft Penny because his ADP keeps dropping. It's now 2.5, 3 rounds behind Chris Carson, and there's enough volume in the offense to go around to both of these running backs for them to exceed value. Jimmy Garoppolo threw 5 consecutive interceptions at practice, which is obviously less than ideal, and it does raise some concerns, but it's not like you were drafting Jimmy G as your starting quarterback in a 12-team league, right? Like, he is someone you want to draft in 2 quarterback, in super flex leagues, and best ball leagues where you need to draft multiple quarterbacks. This doesn't change anything. Like, we have no idea the context behind these interceptions. It's obviously not good, but I still believe this is going to be a really good offense, so I would still target him under those formats. Rashard Higgins has basically locked down that wide receiver 3 job. We've expected this for a while, but it's essentially confirmed at this point. This doesn't mean you should just be going out and drafting him everywhere. He's still 5th in line for targets on the offense, but he will have some usable weeks, so he's not the worst pick in the later rounds. Carlos Hyde is reportedly on the roster bubble, and this isn't really all that surprising. He's been the worst statistical running back on a per-play basis on every single team he's been on, and Darwin Thompson looked good in that first preseason game. So while it wouldn't shock me if Hyde got cut, I don't think it's going to end up happening. But I will say, don't be surprised if Darwin Thompson takes over that backup role. I want to reiterate, Damian Williams is the clear starter in this offense, and he's still someone you should be drafting, but it doesn't look like there's a clear-cut backup behind him. Odell Beckham. So he has a hip injury, and it's not considered bad at all. They said they're going to hold him out of the preseason game, but he would have played if it was a regular season game. They're just being cautious. They know he's great. They know that he has enough time to develop chemistry with Baker Mayfield, so don't be worried about this. Don't change your outlook at him at all. Melvin Gordon, there still hasn't been any progress made about his contract situation. I still don't believe he's going to hold out for the full season. I think the most likely scenario is that he holds out for half the season and then returns, but every single day he doesn't come back makes it more and more likely he won't be out there in week 1. I still would not take him in the top 2 rounds. Once you get into that mid to late 3rd round, then it's all about your personal risk tolerance. If you're okay with it, go for it. Keenan Allen, staying with the team, suffered an ankle injury in practice and will likely miss the rest of the preseason. We don't know if it's a high ankle sprain or not. If it is, that's not good news. You know, he probably won't be fully recovered for week 1. He'll probably play, but he won't be fully recovered for week 1, and he's at a very much elevated risk of re-injuring it. But again, we don't know. This could be a low ankle sprain, and they're just being cautious with him. Hopefully more news comes out. But as of right now, basically still draft him where he's going. I mean, there's concerns. He's right at the end of that like second mini tier of wide receiver. And I have him in that tier with Amari Cooper and T.Y. Hilton. But both of those guys have concerns as well. Like I'm going to talk about in a second with Luck. So I don't think we need to change his ranking at all because I do think he's going to play in week 1. And he's going to be good while he's out there. Speaking of that tier, I mean, we have Andrew Luck. So there's guarded optimism surrounding Luck's ankle and his availability in week 1. We definitely need to raise our level of concern with Luck. At least for the time being, I've dropped him in our rankings. There's no real reason to spend an early round pick on an injured quarterback. I know he has a ton of upside, but there are a million quarterback options this season. So unless he starts going really late, just stay away from him until we get confirmation that he's in for week 1 and the injury shouldn't impact him moving forward. But I really don't think we're going to get that confirmation, so just avoid him. Kyler Murray, preseason game 2 did not go as planned for him, but don't look too much into this. You know, as I've said before, the preseason is very important in determining who's going to play, who's going to get the ball, but it's not important in determining how good people are. He played a few series, and they're not even running the air raid. They've said they're not showing their offense until week 1. So what you see out there isn't what they're going to be using. Cam Newton had very similar struggles in his first preseason, and then he crushed it during the regular season. So the only thing we use preseason for is looking at snaps, looking at targets, saying, okay, when the first team offense is out there, who's playing at running back? Who's playing at wide receiver? Okay, those are the starters in the offense. That's what we use preseason for, not for saying, oh, well, he had a few bad snaps out there, or oh, he scored a touchdown. then we're automatically drafting him. So don't change your ranking on Kyler Murray. Antonio Brown should finally be practicing soon. He lost his grievance about wearing his old helmet, so he's with the team now, should begin practicing. I, again, am not overly concerned with Antonio Brown because we already have him low in the rankings for all of the real reasons. Changing teams, worse quarterback, worse offense, fewer targets, fewer upside targets. So he's down in the rankings because of those things. He's not down in the rankings because he wants his old helmet. So view him just like you did before all this garbage started coming out. Miles Sanders looked great yet again in preseason week 2. Again, there's basically no bad news coming out about Miles Sanders. He was great in college, great in the combine, great in camp, great in the preseason. He's a great running back. This is a great team. He's going to be awesome, so draft him. Final report is Austin Eckler, and a report actually just came out as I'm recording this that suggests it might be a 50-50 split between him and Jackson while Gordon holds out for however long that is. I don't buy that. Eckler was the cleared lead back. Remember I talk about who's getting the snaps of the first team? Well, it was mostly Eckler with a little bit of Jackson. So while that could change as we move into the future weeks of the preseason, I really do think Eckler is the clear backup. So he is still the one I'd be targeting, and I'd especially be targeting him in leagues where you go RB0, not necessarily leagues where he'd be riding the bench to start the season for upside, because that's not who he is. He's a guy that'll produce right away while you try and get another running back. He's not someone you keep on the bench for the first half of the season thinking he could break out in the second half. That doesn't make any sense. That's when Gordon will be back. Guys, there's one more player we need to talk about. I just finished editing the video, but the news just broke, so you guys know, gotta talk about it. Josh Gordon has been reinstated by the league and can resume team meetings and doing individual workouts. This is obviously a big boost for Brady, who saw his best numbers while Gordon was on the field. It's a very slight downgrade to Edelman. You can still draft him, and I'm sure his ADP will drop a little bit, so he's still someone you can go after. It's a big downgrade, though, for the other outside wide receivers, namely N'Keal Harry. You weren't really drafting any of the other guys. But Gordon was great in fantasy last season when he played for the Patriots, and they're in need of an outside wide receiver. Harry looks like he's going to be a good wide receiver, but right now they have a need, and it's Josh Gordon who's going to fill it. There's obvious risk in drafting Josh Gordon. I shouldn't need to tell you that, but he's got legitimate wide receiver 1 upside. I genuinely don't know where he'll be going in drafts. We're going to find that out over the next week, but my best guess is like the late 3rd to early 4th round. That's kind of where I'm guessing he'll be going. Right now I have him ranked right behind Chris Godwin, if that gives you any sort of estimate as to where I value him. But the days of getting him in the 12th round are over, so hopefully you listened and already own him. So that's the latest news and updates as of August 16th at noon. Anything that happens after that, I'll have to go over in future videos. Remember, you can view my latest rankings, projections, and player notes at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that's the end of this one. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? If you're new here, how about subscribing to the channel? But thanks for watching.